Sure. My name's Stephen Thrasher. I'm a graduate student here in SCA. And I'm curious for any of you, you talk, Andrew, about closing the door. And I wonder physically, do you close the door? Does a guard come into the classroom with you? And physically, or in terms of the curriculum, how involved is the prison in what you can teach, can't teach? Like, how free do you feel in your conversations with students?
The guard came into your classroom.
No, it's interesting.
So can you speak into the mic?
Sure. So your first question is about the door, about like the physical space. So in Walk Hill we teach in classrooms. They're actual classrooms in the facility. It is a medium security facility, which is different from other facilities that I've gone into. I've mostly worked in maximum security facilities or in Rikers Island, where there's like levels upon levels of security and clearance that you have to go through. And in comparison, you walk right into Walk Hill. It's like, hey, how you doing? Okay, let me take your ID and escort you down. And it's like, it's because it's a medium security facility, the protocols are a little bit more relaxed. So I know that different women professors in the program have had different experiences, and I don't know if this was because I was coming in as in the second semester, but I know that my experience was that I would walk down into my classroom, and then that was it. I'd close the door, I'd teach my class. And I actually do a lot of theater games in my class, and so we're actually up on our feet, we're moving around, we're making lots of noise. And I worried that, somebody might, be concerned when they heard us making lots of, doing lots of vocal exercises, but no one seemed to care. So no, I didn't. I mentioned that to my students once. I was like, it's interesting. I noticed that, other women professors have had to carry like that. No, others have been asked to hold an alarm or something. And I didn't have any of those things. And they were like, that's because you look like you would kick someone's ass. And I was like, I don't know if that's true, but smallest person in the room, I don't think so, but I do think that because we spent about a semester sort of working in a facility, any facility, a lot of it is building relationship with the folks there, and it's getting them comfortable with you. They want to know that you understand, you understand the protocols, that you respect the protocols that they've set in place, whether you appreciate them or not. And I spent a lot of every single week just like making eye contact with correctional officers. Hey, how you doing? How are you? How's it going? And that sort of building a rapport with people over time, and also the work that I think that Rachel and Nikhil did, just constantly having conversations, sometimes the same conversation over and over again with the facility, made a huge difference in terms of making it so that we could actually go in, teach our classes, and not have to deal with the kinds of interruptions that can sometimes be a part of, teaching in a prison, with all of the perceptions about that are sort of and stigmas that are placed on our students about who they are as people, how they may or may not. Oh, one of my students just walked in the back. Hey, Jamal. Hey. And so a lot of that is just working through that. And I work really hard to sort of break that kind of stigma. I don't want my students to feel uncomfortable. I don't want anyone to think that they can walk into my classroom and disrupt the kinds of safe space that we're creating for learning, but that does take a lot of work, right? It takes a lot of work, and it takes reinforcing for the correctional staff again and again that I'm a professional and I know what I'm doing, and that that we're creating a safe space for everybody.
Yeah, my door was also closed in the classroom, and it was also, it was a bit of a barrier actually, because the time we were teaching was during Ramadan, and a lot of students would go out to pray, and it wasn't easy for them to come back into the classroom because of the spatial structure of the prison and how their mobility is restricted across the prison. And so the fact that I mean, this is something we also have to work on in general, I think, with the authorities trying to prioritize the classroom space, because the students are scheduled in all sorts of ways, and our classes don't always take priority. So it's not easy to ensure that you have your full menu of students in every class every week. But one thing, Stephen, that your question evoked for me was the issue of whether, at some point, whether we could figure out some way of the correctional officers becoming part of the program as students. We talked a little bit about that, some tentative initiatives afoot in other parts of the country along those lines. And I was just trying to imagine what that would look like from my own experience inside the prison this summer. And I concluded that it probably would not be a very good idea. It'd be very difficult to imagine the correctional officers sitting down with the incarcerated students in the same classroom. I mean, the structures of authority and the relationships of power are so intensely reinforced at every point, even in a medium security prison. This is not max. It would be too much at stake, I think, for the guards to enter into that kind of environment where there would be any kind of equality in the room. That said, the reason why we talked about it is there's every reason for the correctional staff to feel resentful that the incarcerated students are getting a free education from NYU, and they're not, in some sense. And whatever resentment that might generate, we felt might cause a little friction, and that we would have to deal with it in some way at some point, which is why we thought about, dangling this idea of having the correctional staff enrolled in the classes or in the program. But that's a hard road to hoe, I think.
I just want to say one quick thing from the standpoint of the administration of the program, that you have to remember we are dealing with an absolutely discretionary power. So the prison authorities can do whatever they want with us, and they can tell us we can't come in. They can tell us you can't teach this, you can't teach that. But it hasn't happened yet. And I think the inside experience is really, really important. But I think it is important to remember that is the kind of authority you're dealing with whenever you're in that space.
We have a question over there.
Maybe Gwyneth, could we take maybe 3 or 4 questions?
Yeah, let's take a bunch of questions in a row.
Mine is more a comment than a question. Diane Rubenstein, I'm from Cornell, and I participated in their program at the maximum security at Auburn. And I want to echo what you said about ressentiment, because one of the things that surprised me, and we're escorted into the class and out of the class, was on multiple occasions, the guards saying, how we're giving this education, why are we interested in these people when their own children, it was not so much them, but their children could not benefit from this kind of subsidized education. So I think that what you're saying is a very real pressure point, and it happened multiple times leaving the facilities.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Sukhmani Singh. I used to be a doctoral student in the applied psych department at NYU, and now I'm a project director at Metro, and I'm recently learning about and getting involved in the juvenile crime processing system, because the intervention that I'm directing is called Roses, and it's an peer advocacy, mentoring intervention where NYU undergraduates will go and work with girls who are between the ages of 12 and 17. And one of my questions, and one of the things that I want to explicitly link over the 2 years that we will be working on this project, is the school-to-prison pipeline issue. We're also collecting interview data from stakeholders in the Division of Youth and Family Justice, and I would like not just student reports around disciplinary practices in schools, but also how DYFJ stakeholders conceive of schools and the links between school and prison, because these spaces seem to be very familiar and similar across these institutions. The question that I have specifically for you, Andrew, is around, and also for Piper, is around the narrative of immigration. I'm definitely interested in understanding what you meant by the conversation on immigration popping up in immigration. Are you seeing immigrants in prison as well? And what are you hearing?
Let's take two more questions.
Hi, my name is Annie, and I'm a graduate of the Higher Education and Student Affairs Master's Program at NYU, but now I work at the NYU College of Nursing, where I'm an academic advisor, and I also teach at Rikers Island, so I totally understand what you're saying about the levels of security that they have. My question is, you mentioned the program wants to work with students after they've been incarcerated on campus, and I wanted to know, what are some resources and support that's already at NYU that they can utilize, and what more support do you think NYU can do, or resources they can provide to support the formerly incarcerated students?
Thank you. I'm David Stein. As an activist student, I helped found the Wesleyan College in Prison program, and now I'm a historian of capitalism and incarceration. And so I was wondering, considering all the challenges getting inside prison, I was wondering if you all in your planning ever considered focusing primarily, like the last questioner asked, on the people who have already been in prison in terms of reentry services, and focusing, utilizing the already existent NYU infrastructure with some of the scholarships that Susan, you spoke about. Whether that was explored at all. I know that was a question that we debated, more than a decade ago at Wesleyan. And then I was also wondering about what type of financial commitment NYU in particular has made, aside from the grants from Ford Foundation and Mellon.
Maybe I'll start, but I think Nikhil will have some more things to say. So nice to meet you. I'm glad you're here. We imagined the plan and the proposal that we've written and the project that we've designed to have a very strong re-entry, or as we sometimes say, new entry program. The new entry idea is that some of the people that we are wonderful students that we have in the prison never really were entirely entered into society beforehand. So new entry, re-entry, but very, very strong component of the program. And we're really just at the stage that we're building that. Literally to this moment, people are having interviews with people that we're hiring to be a community coordinator for some of that. So we have a lot of different ideas and projects, and if you have advice on that, we will be very glad to have it. But that's a major component for us. One of the things that happened, and I'm so happy that we have one of our students in the room, is that we didn't, or two? We have two? All right, great. Is we didn't know that our students would leave prison as quickly as they did. So we jumped into the program with the plan for the reentry part to be a very strong part of it, but in fact, we're still building it. So for the moment, we're very much involved in a sort of one-on-one personal support system. But just to mention a couple of the things that you asked about, NYU has supported the program in a rather substantial way. Nikhil has been a genius fundraiser, principally supporting the funding of teaching. We felt it was important for teachers not to be volunteers, and they're paid a decent, not a high wage, but a decent wage. And we've raised money through a number of different departments from the Gallatin School. I'm not sure how much altogether we've given the program, probably not counting salaries, about somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000. But the college has also given a lot of money. But I think the real issue is creating a sustainable investment. How can I put this? Ford will support us for a while, but you want this to be, we've made a commitment, this will go on, right? So there has to be a space where we build in the institutional ongoing funding. So that's something that has happened, but we need to do more of it. The scholarship piece is a more complicated one. I just want to give you a sense of the problems that it represents. If we were to say that we were going to identify 10 scholarships for NYU, that is actually a lot of scholarships, but it's not a lot compared to our students. So how do you select who are the people that are the right people for this? I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen. As I mentioned, I actually think it's a very important thing to do, but it's a difficult thing if, as the way the scholarship funding works, we are, essentially raising scholarships in the individual numbers. We're raising maybe 10, 15 scholarships. What do we do? Now, that said, I also think it's not the case that, how can I put this? It's not the case that NYU is the best place for everybody. So scholarship money that we raise that can also go outside of NYU seems to me another important dimension. So that's at least a starting point. I guess what I would say is that NYU is a school that is always stretched for scholarship money. And I imagine that's true at Wesleyan as well. But it's particularly true at NYU. And so I think that even if we were to actually devote a significant proportion of the funding that we have available for financial aid to ask some of our prison formerly incarcerated students, it would still actually probably not cover all of the costs that we need for them. So it doesn't solve the problem just to say, why don't we just use NYU resources? I think we actually need to raise endowed funds that are protected for the prison population rather than simply saying, well, right now we're going to say, why doesn't, say, SCA use some portion of its scholarship money to do X, Y, and Z? That isn't to say we shouldn't do some of that, but I think that finding funds that can actually be guaranteed and endowed and protected is a very, very different kind of security. I should also say that Nikhil, Andrew, and others have had a vision for this, which is a bigger vision. We still want to raise even more funds to put this all in the context of a Center for Justice. This would be one of a number of programs and initiatives. We'd like to see NYU money go to that, and those include school to pipeline programs. So we one of the first things that was clear from the Gallatin faculty, and Piper spoke up very strongly about this, is that it's important that this not simply become a sort of suck all the energy of everybody who's interested in a whole variety of very important related programs into this one thing. And I think that was the larger vision, and it's still very much on the table as our mission. So I hope that's at least a starting point, but I'm happy to talk to you and hear about your arguments and what you all thought about it as well. And you guys have more to say about this other questions.
Do you want to say anything, or should we take more questions?
Well, we had a bunch.
I have a couple of things I can say. Shall I jump in? Yeah. So, school to prison pipeline obviously is a very important issue. We're a little bit more of the prison to school pipeline, you might say. I want to invite our students who are here, Jamal and Carlos, if they might want to raise their hands and talk a little bit about the experience that they've had. And so we'll go to them in a moment. And so just while you're thinking, Jamal and Carlos, what you might want to say, I want to just respond to a couple of things that David asked. I mean, the one thing that NYU has given us that I think is kind of invaluable is the structure of the degree. It's hard to value it. In fact, we've tried not to. Quite consciously, to put a dollar value on it. Wesleyan still doesn't have a degree program, as you know, and they're not getting permission from the administration to do so, precisely because there's a concern that if you start giving degrees, you're going to devalue the degree that people paid for. We haven't run into that problem yet, but it's a real consideration, that could come up down the line. But I think that's an invaluable That's an invaluable contribution from the university. And I can't overstate the in-kind support we've gotten from clerical, administrative, the expertise people have offered and just donated their time. There's a lot of surplus capacity here when you ask people to do something that they're passionate about. And I think Andrew's point about this being a bottom-up initiative is super important. There's a lot of people who feel ownership over this program, and I've never actually, in my experience here, seen something like it. Where there's really just this kind of collective energy coming from lots of quarters and people wanting to participate, not necessarily wanting credit, people willing to do all kinds of different jobs. No job is too small for many people here. And it's really been an amazing and inspiring thing to watch. So I just wanted to say, to sort of make those 2 points. The re-entry component, or what, and that's the field as it's described, I don't know that it's always the language we would use, is going to grow as a dimension of this program. We did not actually think, and I think David's comment was interesting about what about education for the formerly incarcerated who are already out. But in a sense, that's the field we're getting into, because our students have usually 5 years or less on their sentences. They're starting in our program. Some will complete our program, some won't. But we're committed to every single student we admit in helping them to think about their next steps in their education when they come out, and helping to figure out how to support that, drawing upon some existing NYU resources. There's a reentry clinic in the law school. There are resources in social work, and we've met with people at social work, people with lots of expertise in reentry services. We're not going to become a service providing agency, but we are experts in education and in helping people think about how to move forward in that domain.